The lost accent. Amara wiped a thin layer of attic dust from the old wooden chest. The summer sun filtered through the small window, casting golden beams that danced over forgotten memories. The attic smelled of aged paper and old wood, an aroma that always felt like stepping back in time. She had been searching through her grandmother's things for hours, hoping to find a story, a clue, something to connect her to the past she barely knew. Her grandmother had spoken with a thick Scottish burr, words rolling like waves on the shore. But since her passing, the sound had vanished from the house, leaving silence where laughter once lived. Amara's fingers brushed against something smooth inside the chest. A small glass jar sealed tight with a cork stopper. The jar shimmered softly, and inside, a faint mist swirled like a whisper trapped in time. As she lifted it to her ear, she heard the softest voice, a murmur of syllables that felt both strange and deeply familiar. Curiosity bloomed inside her. She uncorked the jar slowly, and the faint mist floated out, curling and twisting like a tiny dancer. It drifted toward the open attic window, then turned and drifted across the street to the apartment next door, where a young student sat by his window, headphones on, lost in study. Amara watched, breath caught in her throat, as the mist found its way inside the student's room. The boy's lips moved, and a soft humming began, a melody she hadn't heard since childhood. The gentle lullaby carried the weight of old stories, sung in a voice that felt like home. That night, Amara lay awake, listening to the soft notes weaving through the walls. The lost accent had found a new home, a new voice to cradle it gently. Morning light spilled softly through the curtains of the apartment next door. Amara sat by her window, her eyes fixed on the silhouette of the young student, who hadn't stirred much since the lullaby faded into silence the night before. He looked peaceful, more so than she had ever seen him before. She remembered how her grandmother used to tell stories about voices carrying memories, like echoes trapped in the air, waiting for someone to listen. Could this mist really hold a lost accent, a forgotten part of her family's past? And why had it chosen this stranger to carry it? Curiosity pulled Amara toward the door. She decided to meet the boy next door, to learn more about the lullaby and the strange connection that felt like a thread tying their worlds together. She knocked gently on the door. After a moment, it opened to reveal a young man with dark curls and eyes full of quiet sadness. "Hi," Amara said softly. "I'm Amara, from next door." He smiled faintly. "I'm Ewan. Come in." Inside, the room was a cozy jumble of books, papers, and worn music sheets. On the small desk, a faded photograph showed a smiling elderly woman holding a child. Ewan glanced at it and sighed. "That lullaby you sang last night, it was my grandmother's," he said. "She used to sing it to me when I was little, back in Scotland." Amara's heart quickened. That's the accent I've been hearing. It was my grandmother's too." Ewan looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Maybe the lost words in your attic aren't just memories. Maybe they're waiting to be heard again." They talked for hours, sharing stories and laughter, the weight of loneliness lifting between them. The attic dust, the whispered dialects, they were more than relics. They were a bridge between past and present, between two homes stitched together by song and memory. As the day faded into evening, Amara felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. The lost accent was no longer lost. It was alive, humming quietly in their shared voices. Days passed, and the attic jar sat on Amara's windowsill, empty now, its magic released into the world. But the presence lingered soft, like a breath in the air. Amara and Ewan met often, their conversations weaving the threads of their shared heritage tighter with each telling. One rainy afternoon, Ewan brought over a battered notebook filled with scribbled words and melodies. "These are the songs my grandmother taught me," he said, opening it carefully. "She said each song held a story, and every story held a piece of where we come from." Amara traced her finger over the notes, the Scottish burr humming in her mind. "My grandmother had stories too," she said. "Stories that slipped away, words that vanished like mist." Together, they began to sing, Amara's clear voice blending with Ewan's soft baritone. The attic dust seemed to stir, as if waking from a long sleep. The whispered dialects danced around them, filling the room with warmth and light. As they sang, Amara felt something shifting inside her. A connection to her grandmother that was no longer distant, no longer lost. The accent wasn't just a sound. It was a living thread, sewing together their histories and healing old wounds. That evening, as the lullaby faded, Ewan looked at Amara and smiled. I think the lost accent was waiting for us both, to find each other. Amara nodded, feeling the truth in his words settle deep in her heart. The attic had given her more than memories. It had given her a voice, a song, and a new kind of home. The days turned cooler, and the first hints of autumn painted the trees outside Amara's window in shades of amber and gold. Inside, the attic remained a sanctuary, a place where whispered dialects and forgotten words came alive once more. Amara found herself drawn there every evening, as if the space itself were calling her. One evening, while dusting the shelves, she noticed a faded leather-bound book tucked behind a stack of old letters. Its cover was cracked and worn, and the pages smelled of old parchment and lavender. Carefully, she opened it. Inside were handwritten notes in delicate script, interspersed with poems and fragments of stories, all in her grandmother's hand. But what caught Amara's breath was a note tucked between the pages, written in both English and Scots Gaelic. To whoever finds this voice, may you carry it with care. The words may be lost, but the heart remembers. Amara's fingers trembled as she read the words aloud. The Scottish burr, the accent she had longed to hear again, seemed to rise from the page, wrapping around her like a warm cloak. She decided to share the discovery with Ewan. When he arrived that evening, the fading light caught the tears in her eyes as she showed him the book. This is her voice, Amara said softly. More than a song or a jar. It's her story. Maybe it's time we tell it too. Ewan nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. We can keep it alive. Together. Their friendship deepened, grounded in shared memories and a growing sense of belonging. The attic dust, the whispered dialects, they were no longer just echoes of the past, but the heartbeat of a new beginning. As night settled, Amara closed the book, feeling the lost accent settle inside her. No longer trapped, but free. The days grew shorter and the air crisper as autumn deepened. Amara and Ewan spent their afternoons exploring the stories tucked inside the leather-bound book. Each page revealed new fragments of their shared past. Poems filled with longing, letters stained with tears, and old lullabies humming quietly between the lines. One chilly afternoon, as golden leaves drifted past the attic window, Ewan pulled out a small recorder from his backpack. I want to capture these voices, he said, not just in writing, but as songs, so no one ever loses them again. Amara smiled, her breath visible in the cool room. Like a time capsule, she said softly, a way to carry our grandmother's voices forward. They sat together on the dusty floor, the recorder between them. Amara sang the lullaby her grandmother had taught her, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each note. Ewan harmonized gently, his baritone weaving around her melody like a warm embrace. When they finished, the attic felt alive. The whispered dialects seemed to dance on the air, a soft hum that wrapped around their hearts. Later, as they listened to the recording, Amara realized the accent. The lost burr was no longer just a memory. It was real, vibrant, and part of their present. Ewan looked at her with a quiet smile. This is just the beginning. Amara nodded, knowing that their journey to find and share these lost voices had only just begun. The following week, a soft knock came at Amara's door, just as she was about to settle with her notebook. It was Ewan, holding an old map he had found tucked inside one of the book's pages. This was in the back cover, he said, unfolding it carefully. The map showed their small town, but with markings that hinted at forgotten places. An old stone well, a hidden garden, a little church that no longer held services. Places where our grandmothers might have told their stories, Amara whispered, tracing a finger along the faded lines. Ewan's eyes sparkled with excitement. What if the accent, the lost words, were tied to these places? Maybe there's more to find. Together, They planned a weekend journey, eager to follow the map's clues. They packed sandwiches, notebooks, and the recorder, ready to uncover stories hidden beneath the dust of time. Their first stop was the old stone well, nestled at the edge of the forest. The air was cool and damp, the moss-covered stones whispering secrets. Amara felt the weight of silence here, but also a gentle hum, as if the well-remembered voices long gone. Ewan pulled out the recorder and began humming a melody from the book. Amara joined, her voice rising softly until the old well seemed to echo back their song. As the sun dipped low, they knew this was more than a trip. It was a journey through the heart of their shared history. The lost accent was not just a sound anymore. It was a path leading them home. The sun was slipping behind the trees as Amara and Ewan walked along the narrow path from the well toward the hidden garden marked on the map. The air smelled of damp earth and late-blooming wildflowers, and the quiet was filled with the soft rustling of leaves. As they approached the garden gate, a rusty iron arch tangled with ivy and flowering vines, Amara paused. She ran her fingers over the cool metal, feeling a faint pulse beneath the rust, like a heartbeat from the past. The garden inside was wild but beautiful. Overgrown rose bushes mingled with tall grasses, and ancient stone benches sat half-hidden beneath the tangled branches of a gnarled oak. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting shifting patterns on the moss-covered ground. Ewan pulled out the notebook and flipped to a page with a faded poem in their grandmother's handwriting. Where roses sleep and whispers roam, the voices lost may find a home. Amara's breath caught. Maybe this is where the accent wants us to be. They sat down on the old stone bench, and Ewan began to hum the lullaby softly. Amara joined, their voices weaving gently with the sounds of the garden. The distant song of a bird, the rustle of leaves, and the faint hum of forgotten words. Suddenly, a gentle breeze stirred the garden, carrying with it a soft whisper, like a Scottish burr brushing against their ears. It wrapped around them like a secret, filling the space with warmth and nostalgia. Ewan smiled. It's like the garden remembers. Amara nodded, her heart full. The lost accent was no longer just a sound or a memory. It was alive here, in the soil and the air, a quiet song waiting to be shared. As they stood to leave, Amara whispered, "We have to come back." Ewan agreed. This is only the beginning of the stories we'll find. Together, they walked back toward town, the fading light casting long shadows behind them. The lost accent had found more than a voice. It had found a home. Back in her room that evening, Amara placed the worn map on her desk and stared at the faded markings. The hidden garden had felt like stepping into a dream, alive with whispers and echoes she could almost touch. She thought about the soft breeze that had carried the accent's gentle burr, wrapping around her like an old friend's embrace. Ewan sat nearby, his fingers tracing the edges of the leather-bound book. "Tomorrow, the little church," he said quietly. "It's the last place on the map." Amara nodded, feeling both excitement and a strange hesitation. The church had been abandoned for years, and rumors said it held stories no one dared to remember. As night deepened, Amara found herself listening closely to the silence. The attic dust seemed to settle around her, carrying faint echoes of whispered dialects. She realized the lost accent wasn't just a sound or a voice. It was a feeling, a presence that connected past and present. The next morning, wrapped in scarves against the chill, Amara and Ewan made their way to the old church. Its wooden doors hung slightly open, revealing a dim interior where beams of light filtered through cracked stained glass. Inside, the air was thick with history. Dust motes floated like tiny stars, and the scent of old pine and candle wax lingered. Amara's footsteps echoed softly as they explored the pews and faded murals. Ewan pulled out the recorder again. Maybe this place will hold the final piece. They sat in the quiet sanctuary, and Amara began to sing the lullaby, her voice trembling slightly but growing stronger. Ewan joined, their harmonies filling the stillness. Suddenly, a soft hum rose from the shadows, a sound like a whisper carried on the wind. The lost accent seemed to wrap around them, a gentle Scottish burr that softened the edges of the forgotten church. Tears pricked Amara's eyes as she realized the journey had brought them here, to a place where voices once silenced could now sing again. Ewan squeezed her hand. "We've found more than words. We've found home." After leaving the church, the late afternoon light softened around Amara and Ewan as they walked through the quiet streets. Their hearts felt full, carrying the warmth of the voices they'd touched and the stories they'd unearthed. Amara glanced at Ewan, her smile gentle. "Do you think the accent really was waiting for us?" Ewan nodded thoughtfully. "I think it knew it needed two voices to bring it back. Yours and mine." They paused by a small cafe, the scent of fresh bread and brewing tea drifting through the open door. Inside, a few patrons chatted quietly, their accents a patchwork of distant places and familiar tones. Amara took a deep breath. Maybe the lost accent isn't just a memory. Maybe it's a reminder that our voices, our stories, are part of something bigger. Ewan smiled, his eyes reflecting the amber glow of the setting sun. "We should share it, not just with each other, but with everyone." The idea took root like a seed between them, growing with each step they took. The lost accent, once trapped in a jar and whispered in dust, could now become a living song, carried in stories, laughter, and the music of everyday life. As the sky deepened into twilight, Amara felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by a quiet hope. The attic, the jar, the forgotten lullabies, they had led her here. Home was no longer a place in the past. It was here, in this moment, in the shared breath of two voices joined. With a soft laugh, Ewan said, "Let's start writing our own story." Amara nodded, ready to begin a new chapter, one where the lost accent would never be forgotten again. The next morning, Amara sat by her desk, the leather-bound book open before her. Together with Ewan, they had decided to write down all the stories and songs they had uncovered. The lullabies, poems, memories, and whispers of their grandmothers. They wanted to create something that would carry the lost accent forward, a collection that would keep the voices alive for generations to come. Ewan arrived with his laptop and a folder filled with recordings. "I've been digitizing the songs," he said, plugging in the charger. "We can mix the old melodies with new ones, maybe even share them online." Amara smiled. "I love that idea. The accent can travel farther than any jar or attic." As they worked, the quiet room filled with laughter and music. Amara read aloud the poems from the book, her voice soft but confident. Ewan hummed along, adding harmonies that blended the past with the present. Hours slipped away unnoticed. Outside, the sun climbed high, and the world carried on, unaware of the small miracle happening in the attic below. By evening, their project had taken shape, a tapestry of words and melodies, stitched together by the Scottish burr and the shared voices of two new storytellers. Amara looked at Ewan, her eyes shining. "We've done something beautiful." Ewan grinned. "And it's only the beginning." The lost accent was no longer lost. It had found a home in their hearts, in their voices, and in the stories they would continue to tell. Days melted into weeks as Amara and Ewan poured their energy into the project. They visited the local library, seeking old newspapers and forgotten letters that might add to their collection. They interviewed neighbors, many of whom recalled snippets of the Scottish burr or stories passed down by grandparents. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of old photographs, Amara held up a faded picture of a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, her grandmother. "She looks so alive here," Amara murmured, tracing the edges with her finger. Ewan nodded, flipping through his own photos. "My grandmother too. I never realized how much of them lives inside these stories." Their bond grew stronger, rooted in shared history and the gentle power of remembrance. The lost accent wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a living thread connecting them to those who had come before. One evening, as autumn's chill settled outside, Amara played the recording of the lullaby softly. The gentle Scottish burr filled the room, wrapping them in warmth. Ewan smiled, eyes closed. "It's like she's here with us." Amara reached out, squeezing his hand. "And she always will be." Together, they knew their journey wasn't just about finding a lost accent. It was about keeping it alive, weaving it into the present so it could carry on into the future. The chill of early winter crept through the town, frosting windows and turning breath into mist. Amara wrapped a thick scarf around her neck as she stepped outside to meet Ewan at the little community center. Today, they were hosting their first gathering, a storytelling night dedicated to the lost voices of their grandmothers and the rich tapestry of the Scottish accent. Inside the cozy hall, wooden beams and soft lamplight created a warm refuge. Chairs were arranged in a loose circle, and a small table held the recorder, the leather-bound book, and a steaming pot of tea. Neighbors, young and old, trickled in, curious, eager, and a little shy. Amara glanced around, heart pounding with both excitement and nerves. When it was her turn to speak, she held the book carefully and began to read aloud a poem in her grandmother's hand. Her voice wavered at first but grew steadier with every word, the Scottish burr rising softly, carrying the room into a shared memory. Ewan followed, playing the recording of the lullaby on the speakers. The melody floated through the room like a gentle breeze, weaving through the listeners' hearts. One by one, others shared stories, fragments of dialects, old songs, and family memories. The lost accent found new homes in every voice, every laugh, and every tear. As the night drew to a close, Amara felt the warmth of community settle deep inside her. The attic dust, the jar, the whispered dialects. They had blossomed into something far greater than she had ever imagined. The lost accent was no longer a secret. It was alive, vibrant, and forever part of their shared story. The next morning, sunlight spilled through Amara's window, casting soft patterns on the floor. She woke with a quiet smile, remembering the warmth of the storytelling night. It had been more than she hoped. A gathering of voices, memories, and connection that felt like a balm to her soul. Ewan was already at her desk, typing away. "I uploaded some recordings from last night," he said, eyes bright. "People are already reaching out, sharing their own stories and songs." Amara's heart fluttered with joy. It's like the lost accent is spreading, finding new places to live. They spent the day replying to messages and organizing the growing collection. Each story added another thread to the tapestry they were weaving, bringing together voices from across the town and beyond. As evening approached, Amara found herself drawn back to the attic. She opened the jar, now empty but still shimmering faintly in the afternoon light, and whispered a thank you to the mystery inside. The lost accent had been waiting, yes, waiting for voices to carry it forward, for stories to be told and songs to be sung. Amara realized it was no longer just a past she longed for. It was a future she was helping to create. With Ewan's hand in hers, she felt ready for whatever came next. Winter's first snow had fallen softly overnight, blanketing the town in a quiet hush. Amara pulled on her coat and met Ewan at the local cafe, their breath forming tiny clouds in the crisp air. Today, they were planning to visit the homes of elderly neighbors, keepers of stories that might still be waiting to be found. Their first stop was Mrs. McLeod's house, a quaint stone cottage at the end of the lane. The door creaked open to reveal a spry woman with silver hair and bright eyes that twinkled with mischief. "I hear you're collecting stories," Mrs. McLeod said warmly. "Well, I've got a few you might like." Over steaming cups of tea, she shared tales of her childhood in the Highlands, her voice rich with the lilting accent that had once filled the streets. She hummed a tune that sounded like the lullaby Amara and Ewan had been chasing, a melody woven through generations. Amara and Ewan listened, captivated, their recorder capturing every word and note. As they left, the snowflakes swirling around them, Amara felt a deep sense of gratitude. The lost accent was no longer just a ghost in an attic jar. It was alive in the stories, the songs, and the hearts of those who remembered. Their journey was far from over, but each step brought them closer to the home they had been searching for all along. The snow settled quietly as Amara and Ewan made their way to the next home, a cozy cottage with smoke curling from the chimney. Inside, Mr. Campbell, a retired schoolteacher with a gentle smile, greeted them warmly. "I've taught many children over the years," he began, "and I always encourage them to embrace their heritage, especially our unique dialects. They're more than just accents. They're stories waiting to be told. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a worn leather satchel. From it, he took an old, faded journal filled with handwritten lessons and folk tales. This belonged to my mother. She kept the traditions alive. Amara's fingers brushed over the pages, feeling the weight of history. It's amazing how these words survive. Mr. Campbell nodded. As long as someone listens, they will. Ewan set up the recorder, and Mr. Campbell began to read aloud, his voice rich with the familiar burr. The room filled with the sounds of a language that had once seemed lost but was now awakening. After the recording, Amara and Ewan sat quietly, absorbing the moment. The lost accent was no longer trapped in dusty attics or fading memories. It was living, breathing, and thriving in the voices around them. As they left the cottage, snowflakes kissed their cheeks, and Amara felt a new warmth inside her. The journey to reclaim the lost accent was becoming a journey to reclaim their own roots. Evening wrapped the town in soft shadows as Amara and Ewan returned home, their hearts full from the day's discoveries. The attic, once quiet and still, now seemed to pulse with life, a sanctuary where the past and present met. Amara pulled the leather-bound book from the shelf, its pages worn but treasured. Together, they added the new stories and songs they had gathered, their handwriting weaving a tapestry of voices. Ewan played back the recordings, the Scottish burr filling the room, mingling with the warmth of the crackling fireplace. Each note, each whispered word, felt like a thread stitching them closer to their grandmothers, to their shared history. Amara looked at Ewan, a soft smile on her lips. We're not just keeping the accent alive, we're giving it a future. He nodded, his eyes shining. And that future is ours to shape. Outside, snowflakes drifted silently, blanketing the world in white. Inside, two voices, once lost, had found their way home. Days turned into weeks as Amara and Ewan's project grew beyond their wildest hopes. The online archive of recordings and stories attracted attention from neighboring towns and even distant relatives who shared their passion for preserving the lost dialect. One morning, as Amara scrolled through messages on her laptop, a new email caught her eye. It was from a small cultural center in Edinburgh, inviting them to present their work at a storytelling festival. Ewan read over her shoulder, excitement bubbling in his voice. This is incredible. They want us to share the lost accent with the world. Amara's heart raced. The thought of standing before a crowd, telling stories their grandmothers once whispered, filled her with both nerves and pride. They spent the next days preparing, selecting stories and songs that best captured the spirit of their journey. Amara practiced speaking in the soft Scottish burr, her voice steadying with every word. When the day of the festival arrived, they stood before a warm audience in a centuries-old hall. Amara opened the leather-bound book, and as she began to read, the room seemed to hold its breath. Ewan played their recordings, the lost accent weaving through the air like a living thread. The audience smiled, some wiping tears, as the voices of the past came alive once more. As they stepped down from the stage, Amara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The lost accent was no longer hidden away. It was celebrated, shared, and alive. Together, they had turned whispers into song and memories into a legacy. The festival left a warm glow in Amara's heart as she and Ewan traveled back home, their car winding through misty hills dotted with ancient stones. The road felt like a thread stitching their lives to the landscape that had shaped their ancestors. Back in town, they found the community buzzing with new interest. More people wanted to join the storytelling nights, eager to share their own family tales and rediscover the voices that time had nearly swallowed. Amara and Ewan worked tirelessly, organizing workshops and gatherings, turning the attic project into a living, breathing movement. One chilly evening, as snowflakes drifted past the window, Amara found herself alone in the attic, holding the empty jar that had started it all. She whispered a thank you to the lost accent, now free and flourishing. The attic dust seemed to shimmer, carrying a soft hum, the lullaby, the whispered dialects, the voices of grandmothers past and present. Amara smiled, feeling the circle of time gently close and open again. The lost accent was no longer lost. It was home. Winter deepened, and the town transformed under layers of white. But inside, the warmth of stories kept hearts glowing. Amara and Ewan found themselves invited to schools, sharing the songs and tales with children whose laughter filled the rooms with new life. One afternoon, after a lively session filled with curious questions and shy smiles, Amara noticed a small girl lingering behind. Her eyes sparkled with wonder as she clutched a worn scarf. "Do you think I could learn the lullaby?" the girl asked softly. Amara nodded, her heart swelling. "Of course, it's a song that belongs to all of us." They sang together, the gentle Scottish burr weaving through the notes as the attic dust seemed to swirl in the corners, invisible but present. Ewan watched with a smile. "The accent is growing roots," Amara laughed softly, "and spreading wings." Together, they knew their mission was not just preservation. It was growth, connection, and the promise of voices yet to come. Spring tiptoed into town, painting the streets with bursts of green and blossoms. Amara and Ewan felt the season's gentle energy seep into their work, inspiring new stories and melodies. One sunny morning, Amara received a letter tied with a faded ribbon. The handwriting was elegant but unfamiliar. Inside, she found a poem written in a dialect she couldn't quite place, accompanied by a small, carved wooden box. Ewan examined the poem closely. "This looks like a mixture of Scottish Gaelic and something else. Maybe from one of the islands." Curious and excited, they decided to follow this new thread, planning a trip to the coast where the box might have come from. As they prepared, Amara reflected on how far they'd come, from dusty attics and lost accents to journeys across the land, connecting stories and voices. The adventure was far from over. The lost accent had many whispers left to uncover, and they were ready to listen. The journey to the coast was filled with anticipation. The landscape shifted beneath their wheels, from rolling hills to rugged cliffs where the sea crashed against ancient rocks. Salt air filled their lungs as they arrived in a small fishing village, where narrow streets twisted like secrets waiting to be told. Amara and Ewan carried the wooden box carefully as they approached a weathered cottage at the edge of the harbor. An elderly man with kind eyes and a weather-beaten face greeted them. "I heard you're looking for voices lost to time," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Perhaps I can help." Inside the cottage, walls were lined with tapestries and old instruments. The man opened the box, revealing a delicate silver brooch shaped like a thistle. "This belonged to my grandmother," he explained. "She sang in a tongue that mixed Gaelic and the old island dialects, songs that carried stories of the sea and the skies." Amara and Ewan listened as he sang a haunting melody, the words flowing like waves, the accent a beautiful blend of old and new. Their recorder captured every note, every whisper. As they left, the man smiled. "Keep the stories alive. They are the soul of our land." Amara felt the lost accent grow richer, woven now with the voices of the islands. A tapestry of voices no longer lost but found. The journey back from the coastal village felt lighter, as if the sea breeze had carried away some of the heaviness they'd carried before. Amara gazed out the window, the silver brooch resting gently in her palm, a symbol of the new thread they had added to their growing tapestry. Back home, they set about organizing the recordings, the new melodies blending with those from the attic and the town. The accents, once fractured and fading, now sang together in harmony, weaving a story larger than either of them could have imagined. Ewan looked up from the laptop. "This project is becoming something alive, something breathing." Amara nodded, feeling the truth in his words. "It's more than just words or songs. It's our history, our identity." They planned to hold another storytelling night, this time inviting voices from far and wide, hoping to create a living archive that celebrated the richness of their heritage. As the night settled, Amara whispered to the attic dust, "Thank you for guiding us home." And in the quiet, a soft Scottish burr seemed to answer, humming gently like a lullaby carried on the wind. The next storytelling night was unlike any before. The community center buzzed with anticipation, the room filled with faces eager to listen and share. Amara and Ewan welcomed newcomers, young and old, local and visitors, each bringing their own pieces of the puzzle. A woman stepped forward, her voice rich with an island lilt, and sang a ballad passed down through generations. The crowd swayed, caught in the song's haunting beauty. An elderly man recited poetry in a dialect Amara had never heard but felt in her bones. The accents wove together, a chorus of voices creating a tapestry vibrant and alive. Amara and Ewan took turns reading from their book and playing the recordings. The lost accent, once confined to dusty jars and silent attics, now pulsed in the hearts of everyone present. After the night ended, Amara looked at Ewan with a smile. "We've given these voices a home," Ewan nodded, "and a future." As they packed up, the whispered dialects seemed to linger, wrapping the room in warmth and promise. The lost accent had found its place, not just in stories or songs, but in the living, breathing community they had helped build. Winter's grip began to loosen as early signs of spring whispered through the budding branches outside. Amara and Ewan found themselves dreaming bigger. The project was growing beyond their little town, reaching ears and hearts they had only imagined. One afternoon, an email arrived from a university linguistics department. They wanted to collaborate to study the dialects and stories and help preserve them for the future. Amara and Ewan exchanged excited glances. This was a new chapter, one that could give the lost accent a place in history books and academic halls. They began planning workshops and lectures, bringing scholars and locals together. The attic project transformed into a bridge between generations, blending the scientific study of language with the soulful art of storytelling. As Amara prepared her first lecture, she felt a flutter of nerves. But as she looked out at the eager faces in the room, she knew the lost accent had brought them all here, to connect, to learn, and to remember. Ewan whispered, "You're ready." Amara smiled, her grandmother's accent rising softly in her mind like a gentle breeze. "We're ready," she said. The lecture hall buzzed softly with anticipation as Amara stepped to the podium. The room was filled with students, scholars, and townspeople, all eager to hear the story of the lost accent, the journey that had begun in a dusty attic and blossomed into a movement. She began by reading a passage from the leather-bound book, her voice carrying the gentle Scottish burr that had once seemed so distant. The audience leaned in, captivated by the rhythm and warmth of the words. Next, Ewan played the recordings they had collected, the melodies and stories filling the space like a living thread connecting past to present. Afterwards, questions poured in about the dialect, the history, and the personal stories behind the project. Amara and Ewan answered with quiet pride, sharing their experiences and hopes for the future. As the lecture ended, a professor approached them, eyes shining. "You've done remarkable work. This is a vital preservation of culture." Walking out into the crisp evening air, Amara felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The lost accent was no longer just a memory or a secret kept in jars. It was a living legacy, shared and celebrated by many. Ewan squeezed her hand gently. "We've given it wings." Amara smiled, feeling the promise of the future unfolding before them. The days following the lecture were a whirlwind. Invitations to speak, collaborate, and share their story came from near and far. Amara and Ewan found themselves traveling to conferences, cultural festivals, and radio interviews, spreading the lost accent's melody like seeds on the wind. But no matter where they went, their hearts remained rooted in the small attic where it all began. They carried with them the jar, now empty but forever symbolic, a reminder that sometimes the most fragile things hold the greatest power. One quiet evening, as snow fell softly outside, Amara and Ewan sat by the fire, reflecting on their journey. Who would have thought, Amara mused, that an old accent trapped in dust and silence could bring so much life? Ewan smiled. It's more than an accent. It's a bridge between past and present, between us and those who came before. They toasted their mugs of tea, the warmth spreading through them like the gentle hum of a lullaby. Outside, the night whispered softly, carrying the lost accent on the wind, a song that would never be forgotten. Spring blossomed anew, and with it came fresh inspiration. Amara and Ewan decided to create a digital archive, a living museum of voices, stories, and songs accessible to anyone, anywhere. They dreamed of a place where the lost accent could be heard by children in far-off cities, by travelers wandering distant lands. They worked tirelessly, scanning pages, digitizing recordings, and crafting narratives that blended history with heart. The website blossomed into a vibrant mosaic of voices, each story a thread in the vast tapestry of their heritage. One day, a message arrived from a young woman in Canada. She had discovered the archive and found traces of the accent in her own family's stories. She shared a recording of her grandmother singing a lullaby strikingly similar to the one Amara and Ewan cherished. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. The lost accent was no longer confined by geography or time. It was a living, breathing legacy connecting hearts across the world. Ewan smiled. The journey keeps growing. Amara nodded, her voice soft but steady. And it will never end. The digital archive grew steadily, a beacon for those seeking connection to forgotten roots. Amara and Ewan found themselves receiving messages from distant places, stories of accents that had drifted across oceans, songs sung in far-flung towns, and memories kept alive by the tender strength of family. One chilly evening, a package arrived at Amara's door. Inside was a delicate scarf, hand-woven with patterns reminiscent of the Highlands, and a letter from an elderly woman in Nova Scotia. She wrote about her own grandmother's accent, a mix of Scottish and Acadian French, and how the lullabies had comforted her through lonely nights. She thanked Amara and Ewan for breathing life into these voices, for reminding her that she was part of something larger. Amara held the scarf close, feeling the thread of connection stretch across continents and generations. Ewan joined her, eyes shining. We started with a jar in an attic, and now look, our story touches the world. Amara smiled, heart full. The lost accent had become a bridge of love and memory, carrying the past into the future. Spring had fully awakened, and with it, a new sense of purpose blossomed in Amara and Ewan's hearts. The digital archive was thriving, and their community of storytellers had grown into a vibrant network spanning continents. The lost accent, once a fragile whisper, now roared like a chorus across time and space. One bright morning, Amara received a message from a young filmmaker inspired by their work. She wanted to create a documentary, capturing the journey of the lost accent and the people it had touched. Excited by the idea, Amara and Ewan agreed to share their story on screen. Filming began in the attic where it all started, the dust motes dancing in the sunlight, the leather-bound book resting on the desk, the empty jar that had released a voice into the world. Amara and Ewan recounted their memories, the journeys, and the moments that had changed their lives. As the camera captured their voices, the soft Scottish burr returned, weaving through their words like a thread of magic. The documentary premiered to applause and tears, bringing the lost accent to new audiences and inspiring others to seek their own stories. Amara looked at Ewan, gratitude shining in her eyes. Our journey has become everyone's journey. Ewan smiled. And it's far from over. The documentary's success brought a gentle wave of recognition, but Amara and Ewan remained grounded in what mattered most. The voices themselves, the stories waiting to be told, and the connections they had forged. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara sat in the attic, the familiar scent of dust and old paper surrounding her. She held the empty jar, its glass cool against her palm, and whispered a thank you to the lost accent that had changed her life. Ewan joined her, carrying a small wooden box filled with letters and photographs collected over their journey. They opened it together, sifting through memories like treasures. We started with a whisper, Amara said softly, and now it's a chorus. Ewan nodded. A song that will carry on, long after we're gone. Outside, the wind stirred the branches, carrying the faintest hint of a Scottish burr, a lullaby humming through the air. Amara smiled, feeling the circle complete yet ever turning. The lost accent was no longer lost. It was home,